I'd like to begin this evening by bringing the community together first and foremost with a land acknowledgement, and then with a bit of a libation, just to open us up to the possibilities of learning and healing in this discussion tonight. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We are standing on the ancestral lands of Native people. And if you're here in New Jersey and many places up and down the East Coast, it is the land of the Lanai Lenape. We pay respects to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. So thank you for listening. And tonight, libation, and again, offering and reminding people of the beauty of the plant. And if you can see, the plant unfolds in a spiral fashion. And if we could but learn to be more like the plants, this plant would no more think of not blooming, of not being its fullest, deepest, richest green, of not sinking its roots deep into this potted soil. And yet we as humans hold ourselves back and cut ourselves off in so many countless ways, again and again. We actually spend a lot of time doing this. So I just offer the libation tonight. I'm sharing some quartz with this beautiful plant. Oh, I do think she needs a little water as well, that we come together as a community to heal, that we commit to honesty, and that we also commit and share and give each other grace, because none of us knows how to do this exactly the right way. But we're here tonight because I believe we all want to do something to contribute to the interconnectedness of all humanity, to the interweaving of our hearts, minds, and spirits to make this world a better world for all of us. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd like to introduce our guest this evening. And I'm going to bring Chandra on. And perhaps Chandra could tell us a little bit about who she is, where she is, and perhaps what brings her here this evening. Unless Maya or Amy, I don't know if you have any, or Sarah, if you have any particular announcements before that. All right, they're all shaking their heads no. So let's see. I am going to pin Chandra. You can all see her. There she is. There she is. Hello, Ms. Pointer.
Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me okay? Awesome. I was like, oh, I can't hear them. And then I was like, wait, they're on mute. Well, I want to start off by thanking you guys for allowing me to join this conversation. I put in my bio a couple of things about myself. And the reason why I chose those specific things is I am learning as I unpack my own bias and give myself a little grace for the things that I I guess, didn't do quite lovingly. I was going to say wrong, but that's just not the right word. The things that I just didn't do quite lovingly because of not just my own trauma, but the trauma from generations back and how I was raised and how I was taught and certain triggers that caused me to lash out in ways that are unkind. So I kind of start that, and everything that I have done since the birth of my son Noah has been to create a better life for him. I grew up in Rochester, New York. My mom is from Alabama. My dad is from Arkansas. Both my parents were in the home, but it wasn't quite a safe environment, and not because they didn't provide. We tried to be a happy family. We just had so much trauma that we sort of lived that way. We responded to each other that way. We just didn't really know how to do it right. My dad, I think he only went to the 5th grade. He's always doing for himself. My mom, came from a very sort of structured and happy family. Her dad was a landowner, but she grew up in Jim Crow, Alabama. So that has his traumas that she doesn't even talk about today. And I noticed in my family that we don't actually talk to one another. We have our opinions and we fight those opinions tooth and nail. Our responses are generally from a fear or a protection space. So we don't listen to each other. We just hear enough so that we can attack back. And that's how I lived my life. That's how I grew up. I grew up in, we now live in the 19th Ward of Rochester. I didn't say that part, which is a historical and really cool neighborhood as I research it. It's one of the only neighborhoods in Rochester that has fought redlining and fought to keep this neighborhood diverse from way back. I was reading that even Wegmans, the Wegmans brothers that started here, specifically wrote in contracts to not have Black folks live in their neighborhoods. Wegmans and Sibley and Eastman Kodak, it goes way back. So I grew up in the projects, which it's in a different ward. And I was happy. I was happy. I played. I had a community. My mom worked very hard. She had, I think, 3 jobs at one point. So I was a latchkey kid, meaning there was no supervision when I got home from school. And mostly I was responsible for my brothers, 2 of which were older, or 1 of which was older, and 2 of which were younger. And I'm going to speed this up. I'm just trying to settle in this conversation. I was very happy in my neighborhood because I didn't realize that there was anything other than what I was living in. So I had to protect myself. The reason why I was considered a smart kid, and we had a program here called Black Scholars, and the reason why I graduated top of my class when I was in the city was because in order to not fight, I went to the library because it was just a place where nobody else was. If I wasn't in the library, I was basically going to be in a fight somewhere. I was often suspended from school. Teachers liked me because I was bright, but I just lashed out in the way I knew how, which was to hit.
So Chandra, you're, framing, so we know you're from Rochester, New York.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask you again, if you're not talking, to please put yourself on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, so that way we can avoid the feedback. And what I would like our gathered community to consider is that we're asking this question. So we know we had a little girl who grew up in Rochester. She was kind of a little bit of a tough chick. She could fight. She was smart, and she ended up graduating atop her class because she would hang out in the library to avoid a fight. Again, pretty smart little kid. A library is a good place to hang out. But tonight, what we want to do, and we want the audience to consider this, we want, certainly people to ask questions. And we're asking the question, how can we take the movement for racial justice to the next level? And perhaps we will take it to the next level as we continue to listen deeply to your story. How do we ensure that the powerful solidarity shown by so many in the wake of the murderous attacks on Black people leads to real change? Part of keeping the movement going is learning more about what it means to live while Black in the US. There are hidden traumas as well as myriad experiences that may not be headlines, but nonetheless call for healing. And perhaps there is a healing as we all think back to our childhoods and put ourselves in different scenarios and ask, what was I not seeing? How might that have been different? How again, how did neighborhoods come to form? I grew up in Red Bank, which is quiet as it's kept, still to this day, a segregated community. And people might want to argue that point, but there are many, many streets in Red Bank who've had nothing but a certain type of person that live on them for decades and decades and decades. How is it that that happens? How do those silos happen? If you go to the churches throughout this town, there are churches that are Black churches, white churches, Jewish synagogue, completely isolated. Sunday is still the most segregated hour, certainly in Red Bank, New Jersey, if not across the United States. So, how did these things come to be? And you were framing so beautifully your experience in Rochester as a child. How do these things continue to shape you until finally we get to that fateful night in Rochester where you're a mom? So I'm going to let you pick up wherever you'd like to pick up on your story.
This is why I appreciate you, Dr. Penn, right? You hit it out the park, right? And really sort of passed me, because I think as I was talking about it, I didn't realize I wasn't ready to really talk about it, right? So thank you for sort of guiding me, right? So I'm on path and everybody else gets a chance to talk too. I tell that story because I am starting to realize how it's framed me and it's brought me to here, right? Shortly after graduating, top of my class, one of the things that happened was they started what was called the Urban Suburban program here in Rochester. It was basically because the federal government said your schools are segregated and you've got to desegregate. So with that redlining, and the reason why I mentioned that was they moved all of, they started to build the suburbs of Rochester way back. And so every person of wealth and most white people moved out to the suburbs. So now you had this inner city of kids, and it was the inner city schools were all Black and the suburban schools were all white. And so the federal government forced them to change that. With that, I was picked to go. And what they did was, and I didn't realize it, they creamed from the top. So they took the best students, right? They didn't want the troublemakers, and they strategically placed them in the suburban schools. And that is where I learned that the world that I was happy. I know I fought, but I found a way to make sure I was safe. And I wasn't always fighting. I loved my neighborhood. I loved the people in it. I didn't realize I was poor. And I didn't even realize that fighting was bad. And we didn't use weapons. We fought with our fists, and, the toughest person won, and I was pretty tough. So I got sent to the suburban schools because of my grades. And that's where I learned to numb myself, to not feel great about myself. Obviously, we had to take the bus. So that meant we had to get up early. We had to get on the public bus. And then it took us to a place in Penn, which is where I went. And then from there, the yellow buses took us on to the high school. So we had to take the bus to a certain bus stop in the suburb, and then we can get on that yellow bus. And of course, they let us know that they didn't want us there. And they called us names. It wasn't quite Ruby Bridges, but I had already read that story, so that's what came to mind. And I was in the 9th grade. So can you imagine, I created a community, I had my squad, and now in the 9th grade, I got to go somewhere different. Now, again, I adapted, but I pretended to not be who I was. I was already straightening my hair, so that wasn't new. But now at this point, every time I took a shower, I would wash my hair, which is not something that a Black person can do with our type of hair, but that's what everybody else did in this white school, so I did it. I couldn't swim because I never learned to swim. There was no pools in the project, so I never learned to swim. But I was embarrassed when it was swim to say that I know how to swim, because then that meant I was a poor Black person from the city. So I would pretend I was on my period every time I had to take swim class. I quickly adapted. I found friends, but I did it by kind of clowning and trying, wearing a mask and trying to be whoever it was. Precious, to try to be what they wanted me to be. But what I learned in that whole 4 years, and I was the first Black captain of any sport at that school. I didn't do quite well academically, just because my school didn't prepare me. So even though I was the top of my class in my neighborhood, I didn't have the right training to be anything but mediocre in this school. And what I know now is I didn't have the same kind of comfort to find my way. Everything was so new to me that I just started off so unsteady that I just didn't find ways like I had been doing in the past to just be the best that I could be. So anyways, spent 4 years, Penfield, ended up loving it. Ended up really gaining some really great friends. I thought I was good. I thought I was prepared. I was definitely exposed to more than I would have been in Rochester, because it did lead to me at least thinking about college. And prior to, and I'm going to speed this up, I know we have little time, but prior to going to Penfield, I remember my biggest ambition was to marry JoJo Calloway and have babies, or not even marry JoJo Calloway. We all wanted to just have babies by JoJo Calloway. Now, JoJo Calloway was a very, very fair-skinned Black guy who lived in a really nice neighborhood. And I guess at that point, our goal was to sort of lighten up our babies, or I guess hook up with somebody who at least had a little bit more than we did. But in Penfield, I did have a desire to go to college. However, even though my grades weren't the best, they weren't horrible, but I only applied to one college because the girl who got in had worse grades than me. And so I figured if she can get into that college, then I could, even though my grades were much better. I had more academic, I meant more, sort of extracurricular. Like I had a shot to choose another college. I just didn't try because I didn't think I could do it. But at least I went to college and graduated. I got my BA. I am the only person in my immediate family who was graduated from college, other than my niece who is kicking butt right now, but she's a whole different generation. So anyway, it kind of led to this person trying to just, wherever I go, I just try to fit in. Like every time I start, no matter how talented I am, I start from trying to fit in. So I don't use my full voice. I don't use my full talents. I don't give myself credit. I just go from place to place to place to place trying to fit in. And that's just been my life. I was on the school board in Highland Park, and I remembered being chosen for the school board, and specifically the superintendent said that she just did not want a total white board, which it had been up to the point in which the girl that I took the seat from, she actually left the board, and so they gave me her seat. But she had been the only African-American woman on the board. And so the superintendent was like, I just need to replace it with another African-American. Now, it wasn't just because of that, but I actually in my head thought they only put me on the board because I was Black. But what had happened prior to that was Noah in second grade, I ended up doing the same thing to him that was done to me. I took him out of a school district because I figured if I can get him into a school that had more white kids, that he would have a better education. I knew that, right? So he went to a charter school. And in that, I just kind of kept advocating for good education. He had gotten Lyme disease and was kind of falling behind. And so it kind of gave me a little bit of a spirit to fight for him. So I took that to Highland Park with me, right? Fighting to make sure he got proper education. He got the same, chances as everyone else. That's the reason why they put me on the board. But back then, I just thought it was because I was Black. They just wanted to fill the spot with a Black person. I had no talent. I had no value. That's kind of my tendency. So I spent my whole career fighting against myself, trying to blend in, speaking just enough, I guess to be great at my job, but really not giving my full self, if you will, because it was always this sort of self-doubt. So it is probably what led me to coming back to Rochester. Prior to coming back, I was a senior recruiter at Chubb. They actually had been trying to poach me for years, and finally they got me. And I know it was specific, but I was certainly talented, and I knew that. By then, I kind of knew I was a talented recruiter, but they definitely were in trouble because they just had no diversity. But I struggled. I struggled because when it came to fighting for my candidates in a way that was self-assured and confident, I always led with that unsteadiness, which caused me to doubt myself, which caused me to second guess myself, which caused me to work Saturdays and Sundays and through the night, double checking and triple checking and making sure I got it right, and trying to send one email would take me hours and I still do that today, because I just don't want anybody to find me out, right? So I struggled was just stressed out all the time. At the time, my mother was, ill, and I was trying to be present as a daughter. And by then, Noah was out the house, so I didn't have to worry about being the perfect mother, because that was stress in and of itself, but that's a whole nother call. I thought, let me just go home. I'll be close to my mom. I'll have an opportunity to sort of take a breath, which I had been doing throughout my life. I would always come back to Rochester. No matter how successful I got, I would stress myself out, go back home to Rochester, and then start at the bottom again in a whole different career. So I was an actress, I was a restaurateur, I was a studio manager for a very famous photographer. I worked for the hotel industry. I'd get to the top, stress myself out, drop back down, start another career at the total bottom, get to the top, it was just a mess. So here I am, starting back again, fresh at the bottom in a completely different career. I now work in the outdoor industry. Noah was doing his thing. He came back to visit on his birthday, or around his birthday. And the pandemic hit, and he was living in New Jersey and on his way to Florida, and came to visit. And Florida got hot, and he stayed here in Rochester, based on my, not wanting him to go to Florida. And then, he had been protesting. I'd see him on the, on the internet, or not on the internet, maybe Facebook or whatever, and he'd be at some rally, or he'll say to me, "Hey, Mom, I'm at some rally," and I'll say, "Where are you, Noah?" He had that activism in him from so long. I remember when he was just 11. He started to do community service work, but he wasn't even allowed to do it. So he started on this thing called Buddy Ball, and he wasn't allowed because he wasn't old enough. So he just passed out flyers until they let him, be of service. But he just loved being of service. He always had his opinion. He's a beautiful child who never gave me a stitch of real trouble, right? He just gave me enough trouble just to make it interesting. But he was always protecting me. His dad and I were constantly at each other's throats. And he sort of sat Switzerland, numbing himself, right? He didn't want to offend me. He didn't want to offend his dad. So, as much as I tried to give him a different experience, I ended up giving him the same experience that I had growing up. But, the activist in him showed up. And, he said to me one night, September 4th, I'm going to go out and protest. And I said, "Be careful," which is something I say no matter what he was going to do. Like, I'm going to school, I'd say, "Be careful." I'm going to the movies, "Be careful." I'm going to the mall, "Be careful." From as soon as I would let him go out on his own. So he went out on September 4th, and he started out peaceful protests at the church. They weren't saying much. Probably would have placated me, but for Noah, it wasn't enough. So he then decided to follow a group called Free to People Rock to protest at the public safety building. I said to him, "You need to get some goggles." And I don't even know why I said it. I had seen, on the internet where people had like these sort of protest safety kits. They had water to get the pepper spray out of their eyes. They had goggles so that, they wouldn't lose their eyesight. I said, "You should get some goggles." I don't know why that came to me, but, I don't live in my own space. And so I have just one little corner of space here. And so everything's just sort of packed and not organized. We couldn't find the swim goggles that I was looking for. I thought they were right there. And so he wanted to go. So he said, "I'll be careful, I'll hang back." And, I don't really consider myself being a helicopter mom, but I was a very fierce mom and just kind of needed to make sure my son was safe. So, but I had learned to not overdo it because, he's my everything. So, he had kind of trained me, if you will, to just give him some space. So when he left out, I didn't call him, even though I kept looking at my phone and I wanted to call him. Didn't call him. I did decide to text him somewhere around 10:30, and he sent me a text back saying he was fine and everything was okay. And then the next time he reached out to me, he said, and I'm quoting him, "Don't be mad at me, Mom. Don't be mad at me, Mom. But I'm in the hospital." And sure enough, I got angry. I was angry. I was angry that he was in the hospital. The first thought to my head was anger, but Noah's just so bright. He knows that that's how I respond. I respond first from anger when I'm afraid. So taking me back to growing up in the projects and living in a household where that's how we communicated with each other. So don't be mad at me, Mom. I'm in the hospital. So I took a breath because, I've been in therapy, I've done yoga, I've breathed, I've read every single book on self-help and how to not be so busy in my head. So I know all the tools. I just don't use them because that's just not my training. It just takes a breath to use the tools. Took a breath and I got in the car and I went to the hospital that he was at, the same hospital in which he was born. And they let me back there, which they didn't want to do, which they weren't supposed to do, but they let me back there and there he was. And I saw the eye swollen. The doctor said to me that he was fine, but they had to send him to a trauma hospital because they weren't sure how bad the eye was. So he told me what happened while I was in the hospital next to him. I took pictures for his dad. I called his dad. And then once they came and got him to take him to the trauma hospital, which is Strong Hospital, I couldn't go any further. So now I just kind of had to wait. I picked him up that morning. This was somewhere around, called me around 1 o'clock in the morning. Finally, they were done with him at 9 in the morning. And the only thing I was worried about was getting to work on time and not looking bad as an employee. So picked him up, gave him a look over. He was standing. Sure enough, as Noah is always Noah, he was steady. I dropped him off at the house to my mother, who's been just, helping me take extraordinary care of him, even when she's been far away. And I went to work. And on my break, which was 2 hours in, I realized that my son had been shot and had the bullet that was in his eye that they had to take out of his eye. Like, it didn't hit me till 2 hours later of like the heaviness of it. So I came home, but sure enough, Noah was steady and okay. And yeah, I kind of been steady ever since. I did kind of fall apart a little bit after the insurrection at the Capitol building. And sure enough, Noah and I were on the same sort of thought process that You know, he was protesting peacefully. As a matter of fact, if you look at the, you know, the people that commented, and I found what happened on Facebook because I had told somebody what happened, and they had been following this other guy, and they said to me, hey, they sent me something from Instagram, and they said, well, is this Noah? And I was like, no, you know, because in the first shot of the picture, it was just so chaotic, and the guy was just so angry and lashing out. And I was like, that doesn't even seem like Noah. But then frames later, it showed people helping Noah. It showed him on the ground. I was able to get that frame to Noah and his dad to see, and then it led us to somebody else. I'm kind of tracking off, but you know, these are kind of the things that were happening, right? You know, it's just like I'm working every day. You know, my friends at work had gifted me their time so that I could have time to take care of with him because, you know, I was only a year in, so I didn't have that much time. But, you know, they've gifted me 40 hours of their own sick pay so that I can spend time with Noah. But sure enough, corporate America, even though I've got 64 hours worth of sick time that I can't use, because if I call out sick 3 days and there's no excuse, and taking care of my 22-year-old child who was shot by the police is not good enough of an excuse, I lose my job. Even if I have the sick time, it just sits there because I actually cannot use it. But I've been working. Noah's been steady. You know, sometimes I'll look at him and I'll see the evidence of what happened. One day I said to him, hey, Noah, what do you see? What do you see? And he, sure enough, because he always wants to make sure I'm okay, he goes, what do you think I see, Mom? And I said, no, you know, you don't have sight in that eye now, because he won't gain sight back in that eye. I said, what do you see? And he said, Mom, close your eyes, close your right eye. And I closed my right eye. And he said, what do you see? And it just made me laugh. So, you know, I go to work every day. I take care of my mom the best that I can. You know, I'm trying to be the good daughter, the good mother, the good sister. But it's tough because what has happened is I cannot numb it down anymore. I don't have the bandwidth to not numb it down. So I'm constantly in a state of fear and uncertainty. I have only little spurts of confidence, which is so easily shaken. I have Noah, who is the son and the child that I'm responsible for. Who has to keep me steady. Every day. I don't know how to get steady.
Chandra, we witness you. We witness you. Let's everybody just put our hands on our heart and maybe reach a hand out toward Chandra, and let's take a breath together. We witness a mother's love. We witness a mother's tears. We witness a mother's fear. And we witness a mother's tenacious courage to show up, to go to work, to care for her own mother, while caring for her son in a system that is not supporting her at this time. And perhaps we even witness our own pain in this moment, our own tears in this moment, our own fears in this moment. And just breathe. Breathe with Chandra. Breathe with Noah and Thaddeus, Noah's father, who is with us this evening. And hold this family in light and love, in community. Chandra, before we open up for questions or comments, what do you need from us right now? What are you most needing from us?
First of all, I had a stronger Amanda-like presentation prepared. And I don't know why I'm feeling so raw. I don't have a lot of opportunity to talk about how this has impacted me. And I don't have my own space, and I don't have people to talk to. Except for Noah, which I try not to burden him so much. So it's an honor to honestly be on this call and be able to answer any questions. Because in the heart of it, right? I've been in some situations, abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. Discrimination at work. Just trauma in my own safety area. So, I do know that studying myself, being able to talk about this is therapy. Therapy. So I appreciate that you guys are here. So fire away. I know I probably scared a bunch of you, right? But fire away. I find it really helpful to talk about it. It helps me in my journey. It helps me process it. It helps me actually be a little braver, honestly. So fire away with any questions that you have.
And we do have a few comments I'll share while people might be submitting their questions. So this is from Rosemary Newberry. Noah, thank you for your sacrifice and sharing. I join you in the fight for equal justice. From Denise Fredericks, Chandra, you are a cool, expressive, wonderful mom and woman, XXOO. And also from Rosemary Newberry. Chandra, thank you for sharing this very painful story. I can't imagine. And it helps me to keep fighting the fight for police abolition. I am breathing in love and breathe out strength to you. And that is community. Part of the question, does hearing Chandra's story inspire in you or encourage you to take an additional step? um, in fighting for justice, anti-racism, and what might that be. And it will help you commit to it if you're able to share it here tonight, because we do in that way become each other's witnesses and each other's accountability partners.
Very true. Very, very true. So I'm ready for questions, although I don't have my glasses on, so I'm not sure where they are.
Looking to see if there's any in the chat or any comments.
Okay.
I think sometimes hear stories like yours, there's that, it's literally something that takes one's breath away, and it's hard to form a statement or even form a question because it becomes difficult to imagine.
Yeah.
Difficult to imagine.
So there is a question here that says, has your experience changed your view at work as far as not taking it anymore? Interestingly enough, right, I thought it would. I think I even put in my bio that I am an awakened activist, right? Because I was taught to sort of just blend in and don't rock the boat. But interestingly enough, it hasn't, right? So, you know, I started this retail job, and you know, I told you from the beginning, right? I'm smart and intelligent person, and I know I have a immense amount of talent, and every time I start from the bottom, I float to the top, because even though I don't have the confidence or courage to take the experience and say, I have this experience, and now, you know, let's do something different, right? Particularly for career. The reason why I took this job is because on the pavement when I'm running, I'm super confident, right? And there is just no doubt as to who I am and how strong I am. I just don't know how to take that into other parts of my life, relationship-wise. I mean, I haven't dated in, I think, 10 years now, right? It just doesn't, you know, seem to be worth it, right? I married, was married, I think, no, I was 9, I got married, and to someone who had his own battles. And I was really impressed with how hard he worked and how confident he was, even though his story was equal to mine, if not worse. But that just didn't last because I just didn't have enough sort of bandwidth. So I say all of that is that I can't seem to take that pavement confidence into relationship, and I cannot take it into work. So I'm a retail specialist, a run fit specialist. My job is to, anytime a runner comes into store, I take them from sneakers all the way up to training when they come into REI. That's what I do. And I managed to snag a leadership role in corporate. So I spend about 15 hours a week working as a leader for our BIPOC network. So it's called the Black Inclusion, Black People of Color Inclusion Network, BIPOC network for short. And I take a lot of courage into those talks, and I'm generally working with a lot of people who have titles way above mine. And in the end, I generally will raise my voice, and it's probably mostly after talking to Noah and kicking it around with Noah, but, you know, doing some really great headways for this inclusion group at REI. But I cannot seem to take that into my regular work, and I'm not sure why there's a disconnect. So my day-to-day work, no, it's very hard, you know. I still haven't taken a day off, right? Noah's constantly telling me, you need a day to rest, you need a day to just not work, but I don't do that. So if I have a day off at REI, I'll generally go to work for someone else. Maybe it's hiding. I haven't really unpacked that yet, but no, I don't. I had a just recent experience, and I'm going to be really quick with this story, where there's two stools in our store, step stools in our store, one for my department and one for another department. And our frontline people need the step stool in order to wipe off the counter. So now they use my step stool that I use to do my work. They use my step stool so they can reach across the counter and clean the counter. And I had this encounter where they kept taking my stool. So I put a piece of tape on it, and all the tape said was, when you're using this stool, please return it to soft goods. And I was off a couple of days, and when I came back, the stool, someone had removed all of my tape that said, hey, this is a soft goods stool, please return it. And it just said, this is for frontline and not to be moved. Like, it went from this sort of I'm going to share this, but please bring it back, to this very divisive, this is my stool. And when I did approach the manager about it, I approached it from the shaky voice, and I went all the way around the mulberry bush about how it was hurtful and it was my stool. And I thought, I didn't attack it. It took me literally 2 pages of journaling and going back and forth with Noah and kicking it off of him to come up with the fact that it wasn't even about the stool. It was a microaggression. The girl who had taken the stool accused me of stealing the stool, and she used that word, stealing the stool. So of course that triggered me, because why did she use the word stealing, right? Why is stealing? And then in that moment, I said, how can I steal a stool that actually belongs to my department? How is that stealing when you're using our stool? But then it became very personal. So now she's not listening to me because I'm not even approaching it from a professional. Meanwhile, she's like 12, she's 20 something, but you know what I mean? I'm a grown woman. And now I want to fight her because of a stool, right? After I kicked it around with Noah a bit, I realized it wasn't about the stool. It was that they chose to they made it personal, right? She took off the tape that I had put on there that just simply said, this is a soft goods stool, please return it when you're done. And put, this is not to move from frontline or something like that. And then I later found that she had put in Teams, my own manager, by the way, she had put in Teams that the stool was now going to live at frontline, and then asked me to use a ladder, which, by the way, the stool is light and easy to carry. The ladder, I have to use both hands to bring it out to do my work, because I'm constantly merchandising the store. So now she's telling me I've got to use a ladder so that this girl can use my stool, not my stool, but our stool in our department. And it took me literally 2 days, 2 pages of journal to realize, wait a minute, my own manager chose to take the stool out of soft goods because I put that ticket on it. It wasn't about the stool. She said to me, the reason why hard goods stool is going to stay where it is because they need it for boot fitting. By the way, we have no more boots. We have no more boots because we've sold out. And in soft goods, which is where I work to fit folks for sneakers to run in, they've taken away our benches, right? Because we're not supposed to be 6 feet. We're supposed to stay 6 feet, and they're very serious about that. But their excuse to keep the stool, because there's 2 stools in hard goods, and I hope you guys are following me, their excuse that they gave me was that it's more needed in hard goods. But meanwhile, the stool is never used in hard goods. It just sits in that one spot. And hard goods is in the front of the store, and I'm in the back of the store. So logically, if they're going to take one stool, they're both the same stool, they would take the stool from hard goods, which is just sitting in the boot fit area for skis, right? But I didn't even think about that, right? I had taken it so personally, and I was trying not to be emotional, and I was trying to say the right things, again, sort of numbing down. I got to be perfect in how I present this. even when I presented it to the manager, I didn't present it to the manager in a way of power. I made it be about me and how I want to express myself and how I want to do this right. Like I literally gave her permission to climb my back and abuse me, right? Like that's the Eleanor Roosevelt thing going on in my head. But I realized now it wasn't about the stool. It was the fact that the woman in hard goods who is white, blonde, perky, everyone loves her simply because everyone loves her because she's white, blonde, perky. She fought for her stool. She simply said, that stool belongs in hard goods because I do boot footing. That's it. She took 2 seconds with 5 minutes to say that, and now her stool is sitting in hard goods. I pulled the manager off the floor, said, can I, have a conversation with you? I'm prettying it up. I'm, trying to make it pretty so I don't seem like the angry Black girl, right? I still get emotional because that's what I do nowadays. She shook her head like she understood. She white sagered me a little bit. And then I walked away feeling like shit because now I pulled her off the floor. I still don't have my stool. That stool is still sitting in front lines. And because I called the other Black girl, I said, where are the stools? She said, nobody touched the stool in hard goods, right? Like literally. So no, the answer to that question is a long answer, but no, I don't. I find it very hard to use my voice. I generally have to sort of unpack so much, right? I've got to unpack trauma that's happening in my home, right? I've got to unpack being a horrible caretaker to my mother because she triggers me and we fight all the time. I've got to unpack, is this person taking my stool because I'm Black and they don't really see me and this white girl is more important? Or is it because honestly they see soft goods as less important? I work in an outdoor store, so hard goods is tents and ski boots and active sports, and soft goods is sneakers, which they're recently trying to do, and clothes. So I'm unpacking all of this all of the time, right? Is it because I'm a horrible person? Maybe I'm not even smart. Maybe I lied to myself. Then I get that girl back, right, who doesn't have confidence, and by the time I open my mouth to speak, the voice is shaky. I'm not on track. I'm all over the place. It's just so much going on in my head, Plus, I don't sleep. I don't run anymore. I don't meditate anymore. I don't do yoga anymore. I don't give myself a break. I got up this morning. I cleaned. I did laundry. And then I grocery shop, which is what I do for the house. And the grocery shopping takes several stores. And this is all happening at 5:30, and I'm scared that I'm not going to get back in time to get on the call. It's just a lot all day, every day. So no, I'm sorry, that was long. Let me go to the next question.
I actually have one for you, Sandra, but I'm not good at typing out my thoughts, so I'm just going to babble at you.
No. All right, Maya, I'm going to mute myself.
So I know you and I have talked a lot, and then also when we were in class together with Dr. Penn, we had been on that elevator scenario and we had to unpack the racism there. And I was just exhausted by the end of it. And then you and I really talked about like that exhaustion that you're speaking of now with unpacking it. And I remember Noah coming back on, sorry, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit, Noah, but coming back on and saying the same thing. Well, is the fact that I'm not getting served because they just don't see me, or is it racism? Or, and we talked about how we could help with that is by stepping up and saying something, oh, they're next, or greeting the person in the elevator that you're standing with, not clutching your purse and stepping to the side. But it's like when I hear it in your voice, and you're so smart, and I love speaking with you every time we talk. And because we have this connection with our children in Highland Park, like it's just this, I think we did 2 hours one night on a conversation on the phone. And it's just like, to hear that someone takes your voice and makes it shaky, it's like such an obvious, that is how white supremacy works, right? To make you question everything you do. And, you were talking a little bit about how you and Noah were talking about the Capitol and the riots. And, that's something Bailey and I have been really enraged about, the difference between no National Guard for a riot and, domestic terrorism versus a peaceful protest, and the National Guard is out there with rubber bullets, everything like that. And I just kind of would like to hear from both you and Noah how that affected you when you saw that, especially based off of what happened to him this fall.
I'm going to let Noah take that, right? Because I think I've talked a lot, right? And I think that we share the same, we literally, it hit us at the same time. So I'm going to let him carry it, because you will hear from him some of the stuff that I was going through.
How y'all doing? Yeah, that was a very weird day. Remember, happened early, so I just didn't even, none of it registered for a little bit. I was honestly, sometimes I feel very desensitized to just anything, quite frankly, where it just feels like a video on it just feels like the internet, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing really there. But it took after a while where I really was like, oh, this is happening. Right off the bat, it was just, I was angry, was definitely angry. So it was so weird, because I feel like I'm against police brutality anywhere, I don't want it to happen to anybody. But seeing that, I was like, oh man, like if you're gonna use it, like, right? And I caught myself thinking that, and I was like, all right, what's that about? So that one I really had to, I let myself be angry about it, because it's something to be angry about, but yeah, it also, seeing that, it kind of, part of me was also, there was just this moment of like, do you see it yet? Like, do y'all see it? And it was like, that was also a weird feeling. So it was just watching that on the TV was, it was on all day. I was just sitting there with my grandmother. It was very surreal. Like it was wild. And so, I'm still, excuse me, I think I'm still, unpacking that, shoot, I'm still unpacking what happened, in September. I'm in a class currently with Center for Mind Body Medicine, and I have trouble even bringing it up. Do I tell somebody? Do I not? Like it's very a wide range of emotions. Wide range of emotions.
My brother had said to an individual on the call, he was talking to someone just kind of about what happened, and this person was a Trump supporter, and and he says all the time, this guy will give me the shirt off his back, but we cannot talk about politics. And one of the things that the guy was saying with the Black Lives Matter was, if they would comply, if they would not be so rowdy, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm not telling the story, right, because it's not really my story, but what my brother had said to me was, here he was also then trying to defend what happened at the Capitol, right? And saying how, the difference between the two is a rowdiness, right? And somehow he just said, dude, I can actually, my nephew's standing here next to me, like, who can't see out of one eye, right? Like, because it is not the same. It is not the same. We've got people on the internet now crying because, they got caught and they didn't realize they're caught up in the emotion and they're patriots and all of this bull crap. And they're, talking, with both their eyes, one girl was pretending she was pepper sprayed by putting the onion in the towel. And it's just so weird. It just makes you angry all the time. But Noah said something that's so key, right? Is I just numb it out. Like we're just trying to numb it out. But yeah, part of some of the friends that I've dropped since Noah was shot. The ones that say, I know Noah and he's a really good person, but this is what happens. Is one of the people that I used to call my friend said, this is what happens when you put yourself in that situation, right? And even Noah and I were having an argument, or not an argument, a discussion about, putting yourself in situations and what the consequence is. So yeah, we were pretty angry that day. I think in that day I had permission to kind of feel, be in that moment of what happened to Noah. But on most days I just go to work and pretend it didn't happen, and but I gave myself permission on that day to be angry at least.
Thank you, Chandra, and thank you, Noah. It is certainly in no way, shape, or form your responsibility to make other people change. People have to decide that they're going to take it upon themselves, and maybe next time they speak, perhaps they'll pause and they'll think, and there'll be a face on it. It'll be Chandra's name and face, Noah's name and face, and the humanity. My hope is that, that piece of the brain that can relate to the humanity and the human heart and the spirituality and the soul will come forward. And maybe when they hear someone making a racist remark, even if that someone is their sister, daughter, mother, father, brother, uncle, cousin, they'll speak to that. They'll say, no, that's not cool. I can't control what you think, but I won't engage in this conversation with you because your thoughts have power and they will manifest, and that manifestation has cost and consequence in human life. So we have, all right. Rachel saying it really does help to put words to our experiences, especially when they are painful. Therapy and community is regenerative. I'm so appreciative of your voice and time tonight. Thank you, Rachel. I couldn't agree more with that. Being in good community can be good medicine. So here is, I hate to ask, what can we do, but does it help to know we were as angry as you? I think that's from Amy.
It's helpful when I am in community, right? And I know that there are people in all different backgrounds and faces, and it does help. It does help. It helps to know it, right? Even if it's in my head. No, wait. It's in my heart, just so that the saying is charge my head and not my heart, right? Is the saying that my grandmother used to say, right? Meaning, and I just understood at 55 what she was saying, just beautiful, right? That I know it in my head, charge my head, not my heart, but I'm having a hard time grasping it, right? So when I had the chance to be on a call with Dr. Penn and some of you folks that are on the call now, and I remember everybody was talking, and I was just like, ugh, so irritated, right? Because I was just like, I don't trust none of these people. I don't know these people, you know. And I had some experience where I thought I had allies, right? And it's just disappointing, right? And part of the disappointment was how I relate, but I give myself permission in my good days, right? That my experience is my experience, my trauma is my trauma, and I'm doing the best that I can, right? So at 55, I'm starting to give myself a break. It helps to talk about it. It helps that I have allies. What I hate is that, for the most part, what I get when I try to talk about it, you know, outside of situations like this, is a tilting of the head, this, right? And then a little bit of a fidgeting, because again, you know, you see, it takes me a while because I am so raw, right? I'm also trying to make sure I'm making myself clear. I'm also hiding a little bit, right? I don't want to tell my full story because I'll end up in tears. And so now there's some impatience and fidgeting. And then I realize you're not listening to me at all, right? And so, you know, when I say the whole white savioring, is every time I get vulnerable outside of spaces like this, I get somebody that wants to save me. Now, I love venting like the next person. I really do. And it is not like I don't appreciate that. But what often happens is there's some work for me to do, right? So we had a call once in that Unpacking Racism, in which I shared the story of the woman who, you know, I was working with, and it wasn't a healthy environment, right? And I see it now so much more now that I'm out of it, and I'm still on their chats from when we work, because she wants me to work for her, so she refuses to take the keys back and take me off of any communication. And I see they're doing the same things to another person, and it's not even racist, it's ageism. So you know, I get it on every front, right? But you know, she took the time to write me that beautiful letter about how she didn't provide space, and then she wanted to meet. Right? Now she's the one that sent me the email that she didn't provide space, and now that she's unpacking her own racism, that she feels so bad, blah, 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 let's talk. So we're walking and we're talking, and I had so much freaking work to do, right? Because every time I got raw, because I thought she was willing, now she's like, whoa, angry Black girl type of a response. And then she's got to batter me, or not batter me, but like now defend herself, and she's not listening. So now I've wasted my time. She sent me the email, and here I had hope. And then, you know, we're in the cemetery and walking around, you know, amongst Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony, and now I got to take care of her as we unpack racism together. Now I can't unpack my own bias. I got to unpack her bias. So it's weird. I had another girl who invited me for a walk who said to me, I feel so guilty. I'm so guilty. And it's like, what the hell is this? So it helps to know that I have allies, but I don't want to do work. I don't want to unpack your racism and my own bias too. So I don't really know the answer to that question, because I got my own work to do, right? I wasn't really raised to think like I was powerful, right? I had a big nose. I was told that constantly, that I would be pretty if I had a big nose, and that luckily you have green eyes, and you know, don't speak so loud, and don't act this way, and don't act this way. I got my own stuff with me. So it helped. I just don't know how to answer that question. I don't know how to help you help me. And I do want to say, though, in the beginning of the actual question was, I hate to ask. Please don't hate to ask, right? Because the absolute only way that we're going to get this right, Dr. Penn said it at the beginning, we're all trying to get this right. I don't get it right. You know, I had an argument whether I was Black enough, right? Because seriously, because they say, hey, you know, you speak well, which I hate when people say that about me, and you have green eyes and you have lighter skin and people love you and you're so charismatic and you're educated, and that's different from a darker skinned person who may be considered ratchet, right? Or who didn't have the education, or who, you know, uses Ebonics, which, you know, now there's a whole dictionary for Ebonics and everybody's trying to use Ebonics, right? It's so crazy. But I got my own stuff to unlearn. Every single day I get something wrong, and thankfully for Noah, you know, when he leaves, I really need to do some work, so I'm ready for him to go. Yeah, he's constantly saying to me, Mom, did you really say that? Or don't say that? Or why do you think like that? You know what I'm saying? And I got to remember that, yeah, I was raised by someone who grew up in Jim Crow, Alabama. And that's a whole lot of stuff with trauma so deep that she don't even want to talk about it. Right? So don't hate to ask, right? That's how you can help me. You know what? Let's do this together. And I think if we lead from love and wanting to figure it out, right? I may get offended, but what I am doing now and where I'm brave enough now is I don't walk away in the anger, right? I didn't do well with my boss, who I pulled aside and gave her my power, but I'm ready come Monday. I'm ready to let her know that I was offended by this. And this is no longer about the bench. This is about a microaggression. And please explain, right? So yeah, don't hate to ask. And I know I have allies out there, so I am thankful for that.
I can jump in
Well,
here.
thank you. And I know we'll be, you know, wrapping up shortly.
Oh my God.
Noah, did you see there is a note in chat from Bailey to you? So if you could there. And Taretha is saying, one good way to help is to realize and address your own conscious and subconscious biases. Yeah, it's, you know, really everybody's got to pick up their oar and row. It is not the responsibility of people living in Black bodies to solve it for you. You have to solve it for yourself. And hopefully forums like this give you an opportunity and a privilege to kind of peek behind the curtain. And if you care to go to the history, if you care to take a recommended reading and then form your own groups and discussion, whether within your family structure or at your place of work, that's you, that's your work, and that's your responsibility. As Chandra says, she has her own work and her own responsibilities to look at, you know, just as I do. And I think that's the difference in some of the discussion that's happening now as opposed to discussions that were happening 10, 15, 20 years ago, where it was somehow it was the responsibility of the Black person in the room to solve it. And to, if I showed up in the room, oh, the event is integrated, and, no, that's, if the consciousness hasn't shifted, well, then nothing has really changed except for your guilt is assuaged. And you can say, well, there was a woman there was a Black person there, or there was a this, or, something that you define as other. And I think the conversation is beginning to shift now, that if you want to change it, you need to change it. Here's my lived experience. If you benefit from my sharing, well, that's wonderful, but it's no longer my responsibility to make you see something that you don't want to see.
May I comment? Sorry, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, speak up a little louder, Sarah.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say there's a theme here, Chandra and Noah and all of us, the duality of experience. And obviously this has been this is pretty well understood by this group that living in white skin in the United States is much easier than living in black skin. And I just wanted to draw that out, that uh, when I'm at work, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think. I have to be on time for the job I have now, but I used to run late. I'd be late, 15 minutes late every time, and I got away with it. And all of our experiences as living in white skin are much simpler and without the kind of concern. And honestly, I'm not someone who has pushed myself very hard in life. And when I have tried, I have gotten to get things done or whatever, but it's a luxury that I've had, where I can be mediocre at times and maybe still get away with it. I'm speaking honestly and just my awareness. And I'll share something from my past, which, just to speak about the difference between being black and being white in this country. And I had when I was 24, I was hospitalized for a mental issue, and the police were involved. And I don't know if my dad is still here, but he was there for this. This is going back 20 years now or more. But the fact is that I may not have survived that experience if I wasn't white.
Mhm.
And I even tried to get into someone's car, and someone I didn't know. And so I just want to say, every day it's different. And for us, I want to suggest that for us living in white skin, we need to be aware of how the people around us are being treated. In our first meeting, Mamone Christian relayed an experience where she lost her job. She felt because of discrimination, and her coworkers, not that she felt, her coworkers were aware of it, but nobody spoke up. And why not? And so we have a lot of fear. We have an urge to protect ourselves. We have an aversion to embarrassment. The the urge to conform is very strong in the human being. It is a way to be safe, but we are more conscious than that, and we have morality, and we have also what we know that we want, the golden rule, treat others as we want to be treated. So I just wanted, just throwing out a few things. Sorry if that went on a little long.
Well, I am wondering if I see it's approaching 7:30. Are there any
Dr.
announcements or
Dr. Penn, I think I see Rachel's hand is up. So I think she
Oh,
wants to speak.
yes,
That's
Rachel.
okay. I will be very quick. I just wanted to ask, Chandra, why have you given up yoga and meditation? Is that just like temporary, or it's just been a while? And what if you could, because I share a lot with you, I would love to talk with you more, so many levels, but what if you could take a day off and spend it like as your R&R day, where you have activities like lined up every, hour or something like that, with a little breaks in between for water, where you make it like, a busy self-care day or something. But I wonder why you've given that up. And I think that those tools would really benefit you right now. They help me.
So I'm going to be really quick with this. I can tell you it's because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that if I don't keep up this steely, if I don't keep these walls up, that I won't be able to handle the dam. I'm afraid. So even at this point, and Noah's on, and I just have to be honest, I don't even run unless Noah's running with me, because then the run is not about me. The run is about him. Now he's not going to run with me anymore, but Noah, I will not be running if you don't run with me. Like, I literally am afraid to do the things that I know I should be doing, because I don't know what that's going to bring me. I don't know what that's going to bring me. I don't even sleep, by the way. If I fall asleep, I am trying to wake myself up. Like, I don't even know how to take care of myself at this point. I don't want to know what's on the other side in case it's not good. I am this close to the edge, and I keep leaning that way and something pushes me over, but it is so, that line is so, so thin. To be very honest, if Noah did not exist, I would not be here right this second. I would have already killed myself. That is true fact. It's hard. The only thing that keeps me going, is I would never do that to him. I would never do that to him. It's hard, very hard.
Thank you for your honesty and your courage, Chandra. Mm.
Carol, I missed the first hour with computer problems.
Mm-hmm.
This is Teresa Jones.
Yes.
However, Chandra, I'm one of your older big sisters, but you don't know me yet. And it seems as though there needs to be some trauma addressed, because I am one of those wild, free Black women raised New Jersey by way of Mississippi. And I got some folks that know about some stuff with renegading and scallywagging, and we just do takedowns because I was raised in that kind of environment, because we're free Black women and men, and we have to do what we have to do, and who all don't like it, they'll get over it. Because we're now in 2021, we are no longer in 1865. So I think with your situation here, it's okay to be angry. It is okay to be upset. It is okay to cuss every now and then for folks, because sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and you have to keep people in the position to recognize they can't bully, demonize, downplay, minimize who you are. And that's for not just people of color, but girls have to learn how to do that. And being a free Black woman, I was always raised that you have to know what you know, 500%. And I've been in professional positions where I have been the official, the government official, and they'll sit there waiting, talking about, are we waiting for the state? We're waiting for the state. Well, I am the state. Mm-hmm. And then when you talked about your skin color and nose, well, I'm a red bone girl. You just don't have my picture up here now because my computer is acting crazy. But I just felt that we need to have a further discussion later on, or you need to be freed from that, because what you were raised in is often what women are raised in. We're not to disrupt. We're to be quiet. We don't want to upset the other people. Well, you know what? The other people are going to be just fine upset. We are who we are. They're still trying to figure out how we built the pyramids. And I'm talking about the Black, brown folks. We can take the world. We have been in the world for millions of years, thousands of years. And I just want you to be comfortable in your skin and be who you are and walk that walk and talk that talk. And Noah, she gonna be able to do it, because we got some sister prayers going up. And that's all that I want to say right now. And if at a later point, Ms. Carol Penn or Ms. Lorraine Stone or Ms. Sarah know how to get a hold of me, and you and I can continue this conversation one-on-one. And I also want you to know I'm a registered nurse. I got long, broad psych experience and community experience, and I'm also known as the hood nurse. And that's okay too, because I know how to do takedowns. And Carol, on that note, I send my condolences to you, because your mother was one of my professional mentors and superheroes when I was a little baby nurse. So with that, that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we will certainly put the two of you in touch, and she's a powerhouse. I know her, and yes, she did have a relationship with my mother, who served as a mentor for many. So yeah, and there's a resource that's been put in the chat for everyone, the kind of racism you don't even know you have. So that might be a resource that some of us can take a look at. I wrote it down. I know I'm also going to take a look at that. So Chandra, again, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, from one mother of a son to another mother of a son. And, you know, it's such a precious relationship and such a precious role. And I do understand that fear that you live in every day. I too walk in that fear. And, you know, where you are, that paralysis, that not being able to sleep, this is part of the cost that, you know, think of almost any Black woman you know who is a mother, and you begin to scratch at the surface of what we live with. And, you know, again, when we look at healthcare disparities, why we die sooner, and with all controlled studies for economics and for education, we die sooner. Our diseases are diagnosed at later stages, and it's not because we don't go to the doctor, because we're talking about upper middle class women or upper class women with college degrees that go to the doctor on a regular basis, but there's something that happens within the medical community on that end. And the diseases that we do get, whether they're mental or physical, diagnosed later and often undertreated, and not all the treatment options given to us. So the reason why there's more cancer, more diabetes, more mental health challenges, more hypertension, more cardiovascular disease, if you are of a certain hue in this country, and if you identify socially and culturally in a certain way. So again, we all have a lot of work to do. And I'm going to ask Lorraine, did you have a poem that you were going to close us out with this evening? And we're going to wrap with that, unless perhaps there should be any announcements first, and then let Lorraine close with the poem, because I think it would be beautiful to have the arts close us out.
No announcements today. I think we're just going to look, keep your eyes on your email for our next date in February for our next Voices of Black Experience, and for the date and our speaker. And then yes, Lorraine, please take it away for us.
No.
You guys are muted.
No, sorry.
No.
Okay, I think we finally did it. I'm not at my own machine, so the owner was trying to get us ready so I could speak. This was a poem that we had initially intended to present. Wow, I guess that was in January or December. It can be a little bit challenging, so there are some parts of it that will be quite emotional. It is a poem that I wrote for the play Black Lives. It is based on the true story of a lynching that occurred, and the man who was lynched was the uncle of Sister Isis, who was with us Again, I think that was January. So without further ado, the lynching. When I was just a little girl of 3 or maybe 4, a band of men came marching to my mama's door. They called for my uncle, but not by his name. Boy, nigga. To them, it was the same. Send that nigga out here. You know who we mean. That one who hit a white man. Oh yeah, we gonna make him scream. We got a noose for him. Fit his neck just fine. Bet he won't slap no another white man. At least not in my time. My grandma was crying, begging for more time. Please, please, Mr. Boss Man. He won't do that no more. Yeah, yes, sir. I know this a crime. What's wrong, Mama? I peeked wide-eyed round the door, and the man reached to grab me, but I squealed and ran across the floor. No! Mama screamed and stepped in front of the door. Not my baby, she cried. Well, then send that nigger boy out here. I know he's inside. Hush, baby, Mama said to me. You go on inside. Stay back from the door. Baby, go on inside and hide. Well, I'll take that little one if that boy ain't here. I'm here, said my uncle as he pushed to the door. He looked at me and Mama, so sad. Then at his wife as she reached for his arm and fell to the floor. He stepped outside and the voices started to roar. That's him, get that nigga, snatch him out the door. Then we'll go on back for his whore. My auntie said she knew that it was gonna be trouble. Say it started at the store. A can fell out of her sack, rolled across the floor. It hit a white man's shoe, and he let out a roar. He looked at her hard, and before she could snatch it up, he reached out and slapped her down to the floor. Then quick, her husband slapped the white man. She said, seemed like time stood still. As my uncle helped her up, and they stumbled home crying and feeling ill. Boy, you hit a white man, and you will surely pay. My uncle heard, but continued with his wife on their way. Soon as he made it to her door, he called out to Mama, real clear, keep everybody inside. Stay inside, because a mob will soon be here. And sure enough, there come a mob right outside the door. Ooh, they tell him to come on out here and get your lesson. Too late. They sit on him and pull him down, beating and kicking until they tell Mama to bring all us around so we could learn the lesson too. Well, hold on now, don't kill him. We got us a lynching to do. We're gonna teach this nigga a lesson on all these others here too. So, noose around his neck, they hoisted him up and threw the rope around the tree. Leave him right there, that man said. Make sure everybody can see. We'll tell you how long it should be. That was the longest summer. Seemed like the days just hung on, dragged on every day. My auntie had her baby, named him after the daddy he would never see. And for a long time, I wouldn't walk past that tree. And for a long time, I could smell it. Even now, I'm not free. For even now, sometimes I smell it. and I could never walk past that tree that took my uncle from me. As I said, that's a true story, as Sister Isis remembered it. The trip to the grocery store, the white man being slapped, the mob, the lynching, the body hanging until white folks said it was time to cut it down.
Mm. Well, thank you, Lorraine. Thank you so much for a powerful reminder of the history from whence we came, the history upon whose shoulders we are standing. So with that, we are going to close out and saying, Lorraine, thank you for your poem. Chandra and Noah, thank you both for speaking and sharing with us today. And thank you all for being here. I think we're all, stepping away with so much to think about. And I say, please have a glass of water, be kind and gentle to yourself and to the members of your household, and give yourself grace as we wrestle with the difficult. And we'll see you. Dr. Carol Penn, thank you for the privilege of being your moderator, and we'll see you next month.
Ubuntu.